carefully, you'll see that every profession has its language. For example, if you watch Grey's Anatomy, my favorite show, you would see that this show is representative of the medical field, and you will hear jargons like push 2 rounds of epi. Or if you watch Suits, which is representative of the legal world, you might hear things like double jeopardy or deposition, to mention a few. The world of tech isn't left out. It has its own language, and for newbies starting out in tech, this can be potentially confusing. At least that's how I felt when I was a newbie in the field of UX design. That's why at the end of last year, I introduced a series called the A to Z of product design. In this series, beginning from letter A through to Z, I'll explain design concepts, I'll break down principles, and I'll share tutorials of tools as well. I will use practical examples and hands-on tutorial to make this series even more enjoyable. Today we're going into the second letter of the alphabet, which is letter B, of course. Our focus is going to be on the term brainstorm. Specifically, we're going to explore how to run a crazy 8 brainstorming exercise to generate design ideas. Let's start with understanding what brainstorm is exactly. The product development life cycle usually starts by identifying a problem or an opportunity, either for the users or for the business. Once we identify that problem and we set a clear goal, we will brainstorm to generate different ideas to solve this problem. Crazy 8 is a brainstorming approach that encourages participants to generate 8 ideas in 8 minutes. Crazy, right? These could be totally separate ideas or part of the same flow. In the Crazy 8 brainstorm session, the popular phrase, "the more the merrier," would apply, because the goal isn't about the quality of the ideas, but rather about the quantity. This exercise can be done in person, or now that we're living in a remote world, it can also be done virtually with team members. Here's how to run a Crazy 8 exercise to generate ideas in the remote world in 3 steps. The first one is prepare, second step, execute, and third, get feedback. Very important. To prepare, start with a clear objective. You want to define the specific goal you want to achieve during the Crazy 8 session, whether it's generating ideas for a particular design challenge or just finding solutions to a problem. The most important thing is to have a clear objective that will guide you throughout the entire session. Next, you want to ensure that you invite the right participants. This is really important because if you do not invite the right people, then you will not get the right outcome. It's always a great idea to schedule the workshop well in advance and communicate the date and time to the participants. One way you can do this is to send a calendar invite to hold the date and time to ensure attendance. Additionally, you can also provide lists of materials they would need for the session, such as pens or Sharpie, a paper, or any other specific tools or resources so that they can prepare ahead of time. What I personally love about Crazy 8 sessions is that you are able to involve cross-functional stakeholders in the process. I typically would ensure that there's a mix of roles such as other designers, developers, and product managers, at least to bring a variety of insights to the brainstorming process. This allows for diversity of perspective and relevant expertise. An important aspect of the preparation stage is to select your tools. For your workshop, you will need a reliable online collaboration platform that suits your team's preferences, and you might use tools like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or even Google Meet that supports screen sharing and breakout room. The reason why you need a tool that supports breakout rooms is because if you have a large number of participants, you might want to break them out into different rooms to make it more engaging and facilitate the process of idea generation. You will also need a whiteboard tool like FigJam or Miro that allows for collaborative sketching, note-taking, and visual ideation. Once you have your tools sorted, the next thing is to create a structured agenda. Developing a detailed agenda which outlines the flow of the workshop is very important. You want to include specific time slots for each activity. A structured agenda would help participants stay on track and ensures that all the aspects of the workshop are covered efficiently. I'm going to go into more details about the structure when we talk about the execution. Once you have the agenda on the lockdown, it basically means that you are done with everything that has to do with the preparation for the workshop, and now you are ready to execute. On the day of the workshop, I'll recommend that you join the call a few minutes ahead of other participants in case of technical difficulties. As we all know, technical difficulty is part of the things that happens in this day and age, especially in the remote world. Here's an example of the agenda. You want to start with an introduction. Your introduction can be, let's say, 10 minutes. In this introduction, you will welcome the participants and give them an overview of the workshop. You want to explain the specific reason or the specific goal for that workshop. You might also want to set time aside to get participants familiar with the tools, especially if you're working with cross-functional partners. Your cross-functional partners might have different levels of familiarity with the tool, so you want to add an instruction to the whiteboard to support diversity. So you can also walk them through the tool, but also have a section that shows what they need to do, just in case someone joins late, they're able to refer to that section to get a hang of how to use the tool. Once you give them a rundown through how to use the tool, you can then go ahead to provide a brief explanation of what the Crazy 8 technique is about, because not everybody would be familiar with it. The next thing you want to do is probably do an icebreaker activity. The reason why the icebreaker activity is important is to help people warm up and get comfortable, and to get them in that mindset of jamming with you or collaborating with you during this workshop. If you use FigJam, a cool feature that I would recommend that allows participants to take a photo of themselves is that camera feature. So you can ask people to take a picture of themselves and write something about them at the bottom of that picture. That can serve as a good icebreaker exercise that you can do. But feel free to check the internet. There are a lot of suggestions in terms of icebreaker activities that you can use for your workshop. Once participants are warmed up, then you're ready to move to the next step of their execution, which is demonstrating how the Crazy 8 exercise works. Sometimes people would not get a hang of how to do the Crazy 8 exercise if you do not demonstrate how it is done. So you want to demonstrate the Crazy 8 technique with a sample problem or a challenge. You want to show how to sketch or write down ideas rapidly and encourage participants to focus on quantity over perfection. You also want to allow room for clarification or questions or concerns that might arise at this point. So I would say in terms of the time you allot to this, you can allot anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how much time you have for the overall exercise. So you want to allocate 8 minutes for the brainstorm session. Participants individually would sketch out or write down 8 ideas related to the problem or the challenge at hand. Each idea should be concise and take only 1 minute to capture. I'm going to show you an example. I have with me an A4 sheet. I will fold it into 8 sections. Then I would have my Sharpie, which is this. I'll use my phone for timer. Within each box on the paper, I will draw an idea. Once the 8 minutes elapses, I'll take a picture on my phone and upload the idea to the whiteboard. So you ask everybody to do the same. There's also a world where people write down their ideas if they do not feel comfortable drawing. Ideation can also be done digitally, where participants are provided with foundational components that they can drag and drop to create their designs on the whiteboard. Once you're done with getting the ideas on the whiteboard, then it's time for group sharing. I feel like this should take the bulk of the time. So personally, I will allocate more time to group sharing and discussion. This collaborative sharing phase can spark further discussion and even ideas refinement. So you'll find that I might have an idea and someone will be like, oh, that's a nice idea. What if we do it this way? Once you are done with the sharing portion of the workshop, the next thing you want to do is affinity mapping. When it's time for affinity mapping, what you will be doing is basically consolidating similar ideas through affinity mapping. Participants will then vote on their preferred ideas. You will conclude the workshop with a brief reflection on some of the ideas that was generated. Then you also want to share the next step, whether it's to explore some of the concept that was shared, or you prototype these ideas, or if it will require additional brainstorm session. But it's important to tell participants what the next step is, so they know that the ideas which they've shared would be used or be added in the process of thinking about the overall solution that you're going to come up with. Here are some tips that you should consider. As I mentioned before, you can use breakout rooms for larger groups. You want to divide the participants into breakout rooms if you have online platforms that support this feature. This allows for smaller group interactions, fostering more intimate discussion and idea generation. If you're using a tool like Miro or FigJam, there's a good hack for you. You want to leverage AI. With a snap of a finger, you're literally done with affinity mapping because the AI on the tool does it for you. Amazing, right? Sometimes this workshop will not go the way you expect them to go. So if you're short on time, you can ask people to present their top 2 ideas or 3 ideas rather than asking them to present all 8. If you have a little bit more time, you can ask people to pick their top 3 ideas from the first Crazy 8 exercise, and then instead of them presenting it to the group right there and then, you can give them additional, say, 6 minutes to sketch out these ideas even further, so they can spend 2 minutes on each idea to further flesh it out. Once you're done with the entire workshop, I'll say that it's always a good practice to get people's feedback on how they felt it went. So you would do your personal reflection to understand, okay, what could I have done better, or to see if your brainstorm exercise actually hit the goal of the workshop. You can then use that as a yardstick for your future workshops. But if you feel like there's room for improvement, then you can write that down, and also to help you as a starting point for your next workshop to say, what could I have done better and what can I fix? Beyond doing a personal self-reflection, you want to also get input or feedback from the participants. So one way you can do this is by distributing a survey to get the feedback of the participant after the session. You want to do it as soon as possible because people will forget. So in order to get the best feedback and the most authentic feedback, you want to send the survey questions as soon as possible, so that if they have any feedback or additional insights or suggestions, they can provide that to you. The reason why I love the Crazy 8 exercise so much is because it gets you out of your head and into your body. What I mean by that is, it feels like improv, where you do not have enough time to overthink your ideas, so you are just writing them down. And in my opinion, that is the beginning of innovation and creativity. Another thing about this technique is that it helps with idea generation on one hand, but also it's an iterative process, so you can go ahead to refine that solution into something that is much more impactful. Have you ever tried Crazy 8, or do you have a unique approach to brainstorming? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until I come to you next time, bye bye.